Hello and welcome to UC Today. My name's David Dungay. We are back for another big news show. Let's do a quick round of introductions. On my screen, I have today Zeus Kerravala. Welcome to the show. Craig Durr, welcome. Blair Pleasant, and my co-host for today, Mr. Rob Scott. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're well.
Yeah, doing pretty well.
Doing great.
Great, fantastic. So we've got a plethora of amazing stories this week. Let's get straight into that conversation. Rob, what is on the agenda? What are we talking about today?
Yeah, David, well, we've got a few stories lined up to talk about today, but top of our list is a recent story centered around Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise's recent, distribution partnership with Nuvola distribution. But there's a bit of a backstory to this one, certainly because ALE did have a UCaaS product with RingCentral. So I'm really keen to kind of dig into that story a little bit more and kind of get the story straight for, based around ALE's UCaaS story. What do you reckon?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. Of course, RingCentral has had several UCaaS relationships across the industry for quite some time now. One obviously being with ALE. That relationship has sort of come to an end at the minute, although there's a bit of a cloud of uncertainty as to what that relationship is at the minute. They are, the last time I looked, they were still selling RingCentral branded solutions on their website. But ALE has put a stake in the ground and they're now selling their own UCaaS platform called Rainbow Hub. Now, the story in question is via Nuvola, which is a UK distributor. So this has been sold in a wholesale model in the UK, but how that will be disseminated across the rest of the world is up for discussion, if you like. I think this is a really fascinating story. Are our UC vendors falling out of love with RingCentral and that relationship? They have been pitched by Gartner as the leader in this space for quite a number of years now. And I just wonder how some of those relationships with Ring are being renegotiated now as they come to a sort of natural end. Let's go straight over to Blair Pleasant. Blair, what do you think? What's your take on this? Why are we seeing these kind of moves, and why is ALE's going? Actually, I'm back in the UCaaS game with my own platform.
Yeah, I think you nailed it when you said the word wholesale. I think the issue isn't with the RingCentral product. I think it's with the model for channel partners. So a lot of this really has to do with helping the ALE channel partners who frankly weren't as successful, selling a pure public cloud solution in Europe. As you guys know, especially, public cloud and pure cloud just hasn't been going over as well in Europe as it has in North America and other places. So when I spoke to ALE, what they said is basically that the relationship with RingCentral has evolved to reflect the go-to-market realities with resellers and the market conditions in Europe. So from the ALE perspective, the removal of the exclusivity model now lets ALE roll out Rainbow Hub, which they weren't able to do before because they did have this exclusive UCaaS arrangement with RingCentral. And they said that this has been critical in terms of the delivery model that meets the needs, especially for, government sovereignty measures and regulatory and compliance issues and requirements, especially in Europe. So as you said, ALE is still selling RingCentral MVP, but they're selling it kind of like what Avaya did. They're basically just changing the model. So this gives them more. It gives their partners more customer control. So it really lets the channel partners keep ownership of their customers and invoice them directly, and really have that relationship with the customers, which they weren't able to do with the previous model. And again, it's very similar to what Avaya is doing. So Mitel right now is really the only one that's sticking to that has a different model. So I think that Rainbow Hub is going to really let their channel partners again keep that ownership and also meet the needs more of what some of the European companies are looking for.
Yeah, the partnership though has never really gotten much traction, right? And I think when I've talked to Ring execs about it, they'll kind of admit that one of the things they didn't really that they underestimated was how unique each vendor is, and you couldn't really cookie cutter these and how much work it takes to actually roll these things out. And so I don't think, from what I've seen, Ring ALE never really got off the ground rolling. I know it's on their website and things like that, so I'm not surprised that they're deep sixing it, or at least looking to sunset it down the road. The other thing too is, with all these partnerships, the OEM partner, the Avaya, ALE, whoever, they tend to run a version that's one behind MVP. And so it puts the resellers in kind of a funny situation, because Ring resellers will get very aggressive and say, why would you go to, this version or this version, when you can, if you go MVP now, you'll get more features and things like that. So it created a bit of a disconnect in the channel. And I think it's something that over time Ring is going to have to look at. I think through the telcos, through the Vodafones and AT&Ts and things like that, it makes some sense. But through the infrastructure vendors, I think it's something they're going to have to take a step back, and look at. And I think the way Avaya renegotiated it certainly opened a can of worms, like you said, Blair, for everyone to do the same.
Another thing that ALE told me is that Rainbow supports the hybrid model, across ALE's portfolio. And again, in Europe, a lot of the customers are more risk adverse and not as open to going full cloud and public cloud. So they like the hybrid approach, and they can do this with their own Rainbow product, which they weren't able to do as easily with the RingCentral product. So they like this overlay UCaaS model, the way that it's working. So I expect to see them expanding that and going to more areas with that as well.
Yeah, it's certainly nice to see the vendors actually looking after the interests of the partners as well. Of course, those big expansion plans, partners are so central for expansion into those new areas and understanding those sort of local nuances as well in new markets. So that's fantastic. Should we move on to our next story? Rob, what have we got?
Well, we can't get through a conversation nowadays without talking about ChatGPT, can we, and AI. So I thought number two would be a great story around kind of ChatGPT Enterprise, which was recently introduced. I think it was the back end of August. This is a much more secure, business-focused solution from OpenAI. So I thought it'd be good to kind of delve into that a little bit more and see whether we've got some opinion on kind of the direction of travel there.
Yeah, absolutely. This story is fascinating. You're right, Rob. You can't go anywhere without talking about ChatGPT right now. And recently I saw a statistic, 80% of the Fortune 500, or employees within the Fortune 500, I should say, are using ChatGPT in one form or another. I mean, I don't think I know anyone who's not using it, if I'm honest. We're seeing this enterprise now version come through with those enhanced, security features like an admin console, more performance, faster, better, and all of that kind of stuff. The enterprise customers really want to get their hands on. But I guess the security is the really important element of that. We've seen numerous data leaks. What I think was quite amusing was Microsoft, major partner in this project, recently had a data leak of their own where 38 terabytes of company data went walkies via their AI research team. So if Microsoft aren't getting it right all the time, what hope do we all have? So Zeus, let's go to you first. What are your thoughts on ChatGPT Enterprise and what it means for the market?
Well, I think it's something they needed to do, right? This is right out of the Slack type of playbook, where you roll it out. At first, you let it gain viral adoption within your user community, and then once it's so well embedded, then you roll out all the enterprise-grade features and controls to make the company buy it, right? So, it's worked before for other companies. I don't see why it won't work here. I do think they were getting to the point, Dave, where there are a lot of companies that have blocked the usage of it inside. And so I think in order to keep the momentum going, they had to roll these things out. So they added some security features, some analytic capabilities, some other enterprise grade features. So if people want to use it in the workplace, and as you mentioned, I think I don't know anybody that's not at least tried to use it, right, for different use cases, and make some serious ground in the enterprise. you roll out these features, and then you can monetize them, frankly, on the back end of it too. So I think it's, like I said, it's classic prosumer playbook, and I think the way they approached it was the right way to do it. And so now, instead of, I think it's too late to get rid of it, right? It's so well embedded, and users are going to find a way. So this lets companies roll it out in a way that's, safe, has the enterprise controls. They can watch what people are doing, and so it doesn't put the company at risk, but people still get to use the tool that they know how to use.
I'll jump in on that if I can. Yeah, I think there's two branches going to take place in the enterprise, and what they're doing is they're going to be playing in both of them. One branch is, can I use the popular prosumer consumer version and not be concerned about leaking data, educating their data lake or whatever else. And then the second iteration of enterprise application is going to be, can I harvest my own data internally? Now, if I understand this correctly, this is a play in that first space. They're not bringing in internal data at this point in time, but they're saying your users are using it. They're out there hammering away, writing their next PowerPoint slide or their Word document using this. Let's go ahead and make it so that you can bless it as an IT-sanctioned rollout. I think it's somewhere like about $20 per user along the line, so it's good. So it's an interim step. What's going to be interesting, again, is that next level. And at what point in time does a company integrate internal data sources into that pool of information that's going to be harvested and used? And frankly, I think I can see where companies may actually have both versions. I want to use this tool as a productivity tool, ChatGPT Enterprise, to keep my people moving further and farther. And then I might have a select group of people that might be harvesting internal data, call center people, sales teams, analysts, internal analysts, and then limit them access to that additional data.
I find the trust issue interesting, in terms of, OpenAI, who were they last year? No one had ever heard of them really. But now, we are talking about this enterprise edition, and actually Microsoft own a half of OpenAI, and they're baking it into Copilot and everything else within the Microsoft 365 suite. So why wouldn't enterprises naturally look to Microsoft and big tech vendors like Google and Salesforce to kind of, provide that protection layer between them and AI? Does that make sense? And I'm kind of curious as to kind of, will ChatGPT and OpenAI just kind of, I suppose, fade into the background eventually?
I don't know. Slack came out of nowhere, right? Zoom did too, right? So if you provide enough value, I think the one thing they have going for them is it's something that users are already using, right? And that's ultimately how you gain adoption in a company today, is you go after the user community first. So I do think they approach it the right way. It'll be curious to see if how Microsoft's approaches this, because they could, as you said, build it in. They're building the teams. They could build it into Word or PowerPoint or other things, and just.
That's one of the things they talked about right now. They're having the Copilot beta. What's interesting though? I think you're right, Zeus. It's a little bit of the customer affinity towards that. I personally, going out there and using those tools and trying to educate myself on better prompts, I find I can take the same exact prompt and use it for OpenAI, ChatGPT, and let's say Bard or even Copilot, and come up with 3 totally different answers. And what I find myself doing is I find myself optimizing on one, tool, and there's some element of training going on. I identify myself, respond back as a industry analyst or whatever it is. But that prompting, I think, might be sticky. And if that's not transferable from one AI tool to another, that might be something that works in OpenAI's benefit.
So one thing I'm wondering, did OpenAI do this, one to monetize, but did they really do it because of, I guess, resistance because of some of the privacy and issue things and, inaccurate responses and things? So was this something that they had to do to really ensure that privacy and security because they were getting so much blowback from it?
Yeah, I think it is something they had to do, because we would have seen the adoption of it likely go down, as the big tech vendors, the enterprise tech vendors go in it. So, and obviously they didn't do this overnight, right? So they've probably been working on it for a while. But I do think if you are going to play in the enterprise space, you need enterprise grade security and enterprise controls, and otherwise company data winds up who knows where, and that opens the company up to a lot of liability. I mean, it's difficult enough to secure your organization with tools that are supposed to be secure, right? So once you start introducing a bunch of consumer ones, it just creates a much bigger headache for organizations.
I wonder also if they're going to have more robust APIs specific to the enterprise version versus the regular version. So one of their big growth trajectories right now, just in their existing version, is the APIs that allow you to pull in private data, allow you to plug it into other workflows. Would be interesting to continue that monetization is if they enable APIs that just work in the office space, or keep them exclusive to the enterprise version. I don't know what they would look like, but maybe it's a Salesforce integration. API is only available with the enterprise version, although that competes with Einstein. But my point is, maybe there's enterprise tool alignment that they might try and drive.
That might lead us nicely into our next topic. Rob, what have we got? Something around Zoom, I believe.
Yeah, so I suppose from Shadow AI to over to Zoom and their AI solution, which they've just announced, Zoom AI Companion, which again, Zoom is very, very adept in the world of security nowadays. And I suppose they have recently announced this Zoom AI Companion, which is, I think it was previously branded Zoom IQ. But this is a whole new play to put effectively a co-pilot competitor across the Zoom portfolio. So keen to discuss this briefly, because I think there's some quite good things. And we're going to talk a little bit about Zoomtopia coming up, which is their annual event as well, coming soon. So, but yeah, I mean, it looks like, we're going to see this more and more from UC vendors. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we're going to see a lot more of this kind of play from our community. What is Zoom doing? Well, of course, it's this co-pilot sort of alternative. I kind of feel like we're in the generative AI arms race at the moment. Everyone needs to play, and everyone's rushing to get it to market. Zoom is taking this, and they claim to reduce repetitive tasks that we all do by about 60% in your average working day, which is a huge productivity saving. I know 2024 is going to be all about productivity and efficiency within business. So this is going to be a huge play for them. And we're seeing some of that come through already with the summarization of meetings and notes and email responses and those kind of things. So I guess the big question is this just another bandwagon kind of exercise from Zoom they're jumping on, or is this going to drive a real value in another sort of UC area of the market? What do people think?
Yeah, I think with Zoom, well, with all the UC vendors, look, there's a lot of data captured in these things, right? And it's very difficult to harness the power of that data, right? And so I think every vendor is going to have to come up with these AI tools. And I think one of the things it brings too is I think the in-meeting experience, for the most part, is pretty good, right? We have virtual backgrounds and transcripts and chat capabilities. What we don't do very well is pre and post meeting. And that's helping prep for meetings and helping review meetings. Even transcripts and things are only have so much value because you got to read through it and find out who said what. So the ability to summarize meetings, right, allows somebody to spend 3 minutes looking at meeting notes versus, an hour trying to read through it and things. And so I think the way I think of AI Companion is if you're a, highfalutin executive like Evan Kirstel, who's not here now with his own admin, right? And you have somebody who's whispering things in your ear all the time, maybe you don't need this so much. But for all of us out there that really don't have that, or that A-type person that's always in that meeting that sends out summaries afterwards, AI Companion and these AI co-pilot type tools are going to do a great job of that. And I think that's really where the UC industry is going, is can you address pre and post meeting and improve that whole meeting life cycle. And it's not something the vendors have done a great job of historically, but we really haven't had AI to infuse in these products until recently either. So
yeah, I think everyone is doing their own co-pilot type of thing. In fact, I think co-pilot is a generic term and it's not a Microsoft term. But Microsoft is certainly the ones who made us all aware of it. But the difference is Zoom is providing this free of charge, at least for now. But I think we're going to see these co-pilot types of things from all vendors. We've been hearing about it, from some of the contact center vendors. It's not going to be about meetings, but it's going to be about being that companion co-pilot for the agents and things like that. So I think we're going to be seeing these types of things from every vendor. It's going to be more attuned to what that vendor does. So what I like about what Zoom is doing is, as Zeus mentioned, it's pre and post meeting, but also during meeting. They're focusing on coaching and learning and helping people do better in real time with the flow of the meeting. And of course, task completion, and that's pretty typical, and being able to access information, just using natural language. So I think all these things are going to be incredibly useful and very helpful. But I've been saying this for a while. I think we're really going to be going through a lot of trial and error for the foreseeable future, until people really learn how to use things correctly and learn best practices. Because this is new stuff, and it's going to take a long time for users to really figure out how to use it properly. So I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes, a lot of frustration, until we really get it right.
Yeah, and like Craig was talking about in the last segment, I think it's gonna be fascinating to see if you use WebEx and then Teams and then Zoom, and how different the output is, based on their AI engines, and that I think that likely will, redefine the market leadership in this landscape. I'll be curious to see when Gartner with their MQ and things take AI, and make it a pretty heavy component of it, because I think that's going to be the thing that really dictates what people like. And is it going to make my life easier? And does it do it accurately?
Absolutely. Well, maybe this is a good time to talk about the upcoming Zoomtopia as well. AI is undoubtedly going to be a feature of the event coming up. But what are your expectations around Zoom more broadly speaking? Zeus, what are you thinking?
Well, I think we're going to get a heavy dose of contact center. Right, it's something that they're pushing hard on. I've talked to some of the customers that are using it, and using it right now, including some of the MLB teams, because they have the partnership with them now. And the feedback's been the same. It's a pretty good 1.0 product, but it's missing a lot of the integrations with the Salesforces and Zendesks and things like that. So once it has that, they'll look at it a little more seriously. I am curious to see if they roll out documents. Erwin Lazar asked at Perspectives. He asked Eric a pretty pointed question. He goes, "Now that you have mail and calendar, the only thing you're missing is documents." And Eric said, he said two things. "What do you think?" And then wait for Zoomtopia. So Zoomtopia is here, and I'll be curious to see if they roll that out. So that's the one thing I might see. And this is gonna be fascinating to watch, because every UC vendor is trying to, when they talk to, folks like Blair and Craig and I, they tell us how great they interoperate with Microsoft, except Zoom. With Zoom, it's they got the boxing gloves on, and they're not afraid to take Microsoft head on. And no one's really been willing to do that, right? Everyone's been afraid of Microsoft, and probably rightfully so. But Zoom's going to go toe to toe with them, and they're going to use the fact that they've got the love from the user base, and Microsoft's got the IT pros tied up, and we'll see who wins. But I don't think Zoom doesn't really seem scared of Microsoft, and they're trying to disrupt them by building more and more of these features into their product and undercutting Microsoft on price, which is Microsoft does to everybody else.
Yeah, I think the other things we're going to be hearing a lot about are security and privacy when it comes to AI, because there was, all that controversy, a month ago, 2 months ago, people were saying that Zoom's, sharing customer information with third-party LLMs and AI models, which is just not accurate or not correct. And, Eric made it really clear that that's not the case, but somehow, it went crazy in the media about that. So I think there'll be a lot of talk about, AI, privacy and security, and how they're going to address that. I think the other thing they're going to talk about a lot, and again, they talked about this at their analyst conference, which was kind of a preview, but Zoom is a platform. So, one thing Eric said was that, customers use Zoom and Zoom Phone, but they don't know about all the other functionality and features like whiteboard, scheduling, huddles, and things like that. And he said, we need to make sure our end users understand what we offer, and we're going to keep adding features and capabilities to be a collaboration platform, and they keep adding those O's to the Zoom logo. So I think we're going to hear the word platform quite a bit also. And definitely contact center, as Sia said, there's a big focus on that.
So that leads us into our final story of the week. Rob, what is on the agenda?
Yeah, so from one big tech vendor to another big tech vendor to another big tech vendor and to another one that we don't normally talk about in the UC space, which is Apple, David. Apple TV looks like it might be kind of edging towards the enterprise space. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. If you've seen any of the big news shows before, we have been talking about WhatsApp a little bit more frequently as well, and obviously another traditionally a consumer platform that's slowly bringing on enterprise features. For me, this is Apple dipping its toes into the enterprise space as well. Obviously, I don't think they're ready to compete with the Zooms and the Microsofts of this world on a conferencing front. But don't forget, they've had their FaceTime product out in the market for an incredibly long time. They have all of that data, all of those learnings, which maybe they can now sort of start to turn into the enterprise space. So, what do we think here? Could Apple become a credible player in this space, or is this just consumer land all over again, and it'll never get there? What do we think, Zeus?
Uh, I like Apple as a consumer. They've never done anything enterprise all that well. Even a lot of the features they've built out with Apple One and things like that, on the maintenance packages, tend to be for smaller businesses. And I would think if they got any traction at all, it would be down market first. I don't think they've really got the the enterprise grade management tools and the integrations and things like that in place yet. But certainly Apple's big enough. I mean, if you have a $3 trillion market cap, you can pretty much go in any direction you want, right? So, but they might have to do that with an acquisition. I think this feature they rolled out with Apple TV and the video conferencing is kind of interesting. Again, if you're a small like law firm or something, and you've got a lot of consumers, a lot of your paralegals and your lawyers have Apple or something, it might be great for that. But I don't really see it as an enterprise play yet. And like I said, Apple has danced around business and enterprise for a long time, but they've never really managed to crack that code. And I think it probably requires having a services organization and things like that, because when you deal with enterprise, it's not just the product, right? You've got to integrate into their workflows and the other enterprise apps and things like that, and it's a lot of work. And they've had a lot of success not doing that, right? Obviously, they're the most valuable company in the world, and so if they are going to go down that path, though, I think they need to change their go-to-market quite a bit.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? We've seen quite a number of IT vendors try to enter the kind of UC collaboration space recently with hardware. And seems to be more of a hardware play than anything, because they have mentioned they're going to be integrating with Cisco WebEx and Zoom later in 2023. So, is this a kind of first step just to kind of get the consumer hardware being used more in a hybrid kind of state, with the enterprise, for example? Is that their strategy, or do we think that they might start bringing in potentially software into that mix?
I think it'll be both. I think some things are best done in software and some through hardware, but certainly they do like, Apple's one vendor that certainly likes their hardware. They like the integrated experience, but again, you do need to learn to play. If you're going to sell an enterprise, you do need to learn to play nice with other enterprise vendors, and that would mean, perhaps decoupling the software, running it on other platforms, and it's not really been in their DNA historically, and that's why I question whether I have no doubt they can sell to smaller businesses. I question whether they can do anything mid-size enterprise and up.
Well, they're going to have to play nicely with the B2B space, aren't they? I suppose, the tech vendors in that space, because with the Vision Pro just around the corner, they did intimate, even in their early kind of previews, that they were going to bring fitness apps and all kinds of, I suppose effectively, potentially business applications to the Vision Pro in that kind of mixed reality world as well. So maybe this step into the enterprise space is part of a bigger strategy overall.
Yeah, maybe. I think we've all been waiting for Apple to become a serious enterprise player. So, it's a little bit of show me here.
Well, they've certainly got the pockets to get involved if they want to. So, Anyhow, I think that's a really great place to end today's discussion. I'd like to say thank you so much to everyone for sharing your insights. Zeus, Craig, Blair, and of course my co-host Rob, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to the next one.